Hello, everybody. Can you see me? I hope so. I can't see me, so I don't know for sure. But it's great to be back. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here at the Creators Studio Live. My name is Jeff Olson. I'm the Art Education Director for Royal Talens North America, and I will be your host. Today, we've got a great show, and for many of you, this is going to be an introduction. We are going to be introducing the new Talens Pantone Collection of Markers, inks, and papers. So we're not going to focus just on the markers today. We're also going to share some of the cool features of the inks and the papers too. As always, if you ask a question or comment during the live broadcast, reside in Canada or the US, you'll be eligible to win today's prize. It's a set of the Pantone markers, inks, and paper. So a super cool prize. Joining me today is one of our favorite ambassadors. She is a Tucson-based artist with a unique body of work spanning many different styles and mediums. Her paintings capture the dynamic beauty and vibrant colors of the women, animals, and patterns she paints. She works with a multitude of different materials. Layering mixed media techniques is her specialty, and that's an understatement. Her illustrations include, but are not limited to, watercolor, ink, gouache, and colored pencils, which is what makes her perfect for today's demonstration. So everybody join me in welcoming Vic Hollins. Vic, how's it going?
It's going great. Thanks so much for having me, Jeff. I'm really excited to be here and share some awesome basic techniques and also advanced techniques with the markers and the inks. Should be a great
Super
time.
cool. Super cool. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
And as a point of interest, we posted some recent videos. We've got some other handouts and flyers we use in workshops, and give some kudos to Vic. She's been the person doing all the hands-on activities for those videos. So thank you so much, Vic, for doing that.
Yeah, thanks for letting me get creative with it. I always have a good time coming up with
You
some
bet.
fun
You
ideas.
bet. Yeah, it's always fun collaborating. I enjoy it very much. For the folks out there, so today I'm going to begin by sharing a presentation. So that's going to come up on the screen here in a minute. And we're going to go through some of the basic working properties and features, going to answer as many questions as we can with the presentation. Since when I'm doing that, I can't see the Q&A. Vic is going to be watching that and feeding me any questions that I can answer at that time. And then at the end of my presentation, which shouldn't be too long, I'm going to turn it over to Vic, and then she's going to be demoing the markers and the inks and the paper for you. And then I will be watching the Q&A and answering as many questions and forwarding those to Vic for her to answer as well. And at the end, we'll have a little Q&A as well and some announcements too. So without further ado, I am going to share my screen. So everybody hang on. Here we go. Ta-da! Hopefully everybody can see that okay.
Looks good.
Excellent. So Talent's Pantone Collection. So the entire collection includes some markers, some inks and papers, and you guys are going to get the full lowdown here today. So first off, just excited to be announcing it. It's a comprehensive range, like I said, markers, inks, and paper, and it was developed in partnership between Royal Talens and Pantone. These markers and inks have the official match to the Pantone color matching system. For old folks like me, Pantone has such a rich and wonderful history, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it in a minute. If anybody has been to a design school or any graphic designers, illustrators, industrial designers, all you folks out there, you're very much familiar with Pantone. But for some other folks out there, you may not be. So I'm going to give you a little background on them and what makes this so unique. Great news for anyone who needs to make color critical decisions in their work. And what does that mean exactly? So these products are the only brand, the only markers of their kind, the only inks of their kind that we can truly claim the color you sketch is the color you get. And I found some great images from a show we did in Germany early in the year that really illustrate this. So first off, we have the ink itself. This was formulated, as I said, in collaboration between Talens and Pantone. The products that this ink goes into are the markers and the bottle inks you see here. These bottle inks you can use to refill the markers, and I'll share some more information about that, as well as use them as a standalone product. So you've got those things. And if you are a product designer, for example, you can create this wonderful sketch using those markers and inks, and you can see on there there are little Pantone color swatches showing how these markers match that color system. And that means that as an artist, you can communicate those colors directly to the people who are putting those images on the computer. And I think this is a great illustration because the way the markers look and the way the image looks on the screen, they look like different colors, right? So we really are going to rely as a manufacturer on the Pantone color reference to make sure we get the right product. And then here we have, voila, the finished product from that original conception of the artist here and made possible through the color matching system in Pantone. So hopefully that kind of gives you that idea of what we mean. The color you sketch is the color you get. So a little bit about Pantone themselves. So Pantone provides a universal language of color that enables color critical decisions through every stage of the workflow for brands and manufacturers. So what they're really selling here is the promise of uniformity and consistency in color. And designers around the world, whether you're interior designers, graphic designers, industrial designers, there's about 10 million or so, really rely on Pantone to make these decisions and continue this type of uniformity and consistency. The color matching system itself, some of you may be familiar with these color guides. They are kind of at the heart of it. We used to sell these in the retail store to designers and students in design schools all the time so that they can match colors. There's also a digital version of this available. It's also a lifestyle brand. I mean, people may be more familiar with this part of it than they are with the actual functionality of it. This is a picture from a store in Japan, actually. I thought was super cool. But you can see how they apply this brand identity to a full array of products, lifestyle products, all emphasizing this idea of color. And then, of course, there's the Pantone Color Institute. You can check these guys out online. They're responsible for the color of the year. I'm sure you've all heard of that. It's usually in the news or on TV, and they're talking about each new color of the year. And these choices are influential through a lot of different parts of the market from the economy, from fashion to design. They really have and have played an important role in that culture and our culture in general. So the collection itself, it's designed for designers, illustrators, and artists, for anyone and everyone who works directly with Pantone colors, from your first sketch to the final product, as I showed earlier, or anyone who's looking for high quality markers and inks and paper. So the Pantone feature may not be something you're going to be using. Maybe you're not a graphic designer, you're just somebody who loves to work with markers and create wonderful art. There's a lot that these markers can do for you in addition to having the Pantone, and we're going to go through some of that today. All right, so what's in it? So first we have 108 markers, so a lot of colors to choose from. There are 24 different sets that you can select from, so lots of options if you don't want to pick from open stock. There are 108 marker inks, so there's a bottle of ink for every marker in the collection. And then we have 4 different art pads. Now, these art pads are very specific, and I'll give some more details here in a minute, but you can use these markers and inks on any type of paper. So let's go through the marker qualities first. So you have a double-ended marker here. You can see there's a chisel nib and a brush nib, and Vic's going to show you what some of the benefits of each are in the demo. These are light fast. These are pigmented colors. So this is an archival product, if you will. So these colors are going to stay true for a long time. They're water-based and waterproof, which is fantastic. So no harmful solvent or vehicle in these inks. And when they dry, they're completely waterproof. They can be used on a pre-wet surface. Some great techniques can be done with this. Vic's going to illustrate some of that today. So essentially, you can wet the paper first and put the marker right into it, create some fun bleeds and blooms. There are no harmful solvents and no toxic odor on these. That's one of the biggest complaints that folks have about markers in general, is the toxicity and the odor. They are very, very fast drying, which makes them excellent for a lot of different types of techniques. Very smooth stroke. This stuff just feels great working with these pens. Excellent layering with no paper damage. So you can put layer and layer and layer of color on here without damaging the paper. They're really fantastic in that regard. And then, as I said before, they're not only are they light fast, but they're completely permanent when dry as well. They don't reactivate like a watercolor. They have a large refillable reservoir. I mentioned they were refillable before, and I'll show you some details on that here in a minute. And they're made in Germany, manufactured in partnership again with Talens and Pantone. All right, so the ink quality. Some of these things are the same as the markers. This is a 30 ml bottle, very similar to the Amsterdam ink bottle or the Ecolina bottle. If you're using either one of those, it's the same type of bottle. Light fast, using pigments as the coloring agent, just like the markers. It's the same ink. It literally is the same ink. They're water-based and waterproof. You can mix these with water, so you can create a tonal range just simply by adding water to these. There are no harmful solvents, no odors in these either, and very fast drying, just like the markers. It's the same ink again. Very permanent when dry, and also made in Germany. Used to refill. This is something, what do I use it for? Well, it's definitely there to refill your markers. So these are refillable markers, and this is what we use to do that with. But they're also great by themselves to paint and draw directly on the surface of your paper. All right, finally, the pads. So there are 4 pads that are available. It's a type of drawing paper, and these are the sheets that are the optimal for creating a Pantone color match. And we'll talk about that here in a minute too. But depending on how you apply the ink, you can create an actual color swatch that can be used to match the color too. So the art pad, you can see here, it's the larger orange one. It comes in an A3, A4 size with 20 sheets. A3 is a European paper size. A comparable paper size would be 12 by 16 in the US. The A4 is kind of like a 9 by 12. The sketchbook has an A4 as well, and an A5, which is kind of like a 6 by 8 sheet of paper, and it has 30 sheets. So the sketchbook has 30 sheets. The paper is the same in both, though. It's an 82-pound or 180 GSM drawing paper. It's got a smooth surface. It's somewhat absorbent, very minimal bleed, though, so you can get some sharp edges with it. It's a true white for the best representation of the ink color. It's acid-free. It's an FSC mix. That means it's a combination of controlled forest and recyclables in the paper. And you can see that also in the packaging as well. All right, so FAQ. So I'm going to go through step by step some of the features of these markers and inks and answer hopefully a lot of questions right off the bat for folks before we get into the dialogue later. The first thing I want to say is these are a unique experience, especially the markers. Pretty much forget what you know about using other markers and begin to enjoy a truly unique color experience because they have some unique qualities that make them different from other markers you might be enjoying right now. So first of all, how did we come to this color selection? We worked with Pantone and chose from more than 2,000 options of colors and created this 108 color line. 11 of the color families that were the most popular as advised by Pantone. And then we added a primary set to the collection to provide artists and designers with some basics. Which system is the Pantone Color Match based on? So those of you who aren't familiar with Pantone, they have several different color systems. The one that we based our markers on is the Formula Guide Solid Uncoated. So they have color guides for colors that are matte. They have color guides for colors that are gloss on different surfaces. And they have a variety of different series of colors too. And ours is based on the graphic color system. If you're a graphic designer, you're most familiar with this one. When do I get the color match with Pantone? So for an optimal color match, to create that actual color chip, you use the Pantone paper and you add 1 layer of the ink from the marker chisel nib side, and that will give you literally a Pantone color chip. And you can see an example of one being made there on the left-hand side. So that's the optimal way to make that. How much ink is there in the marker? So these are a pretty big marker. They contain 4 mil of ink inside of them. What's so special about the chisel cap? So this is the cap that you'll find on every marker. It's an actual representation of the Pantone color chip. So the Talens logo is embedded on it. Below, you'll get the abbreviation of the specific Pantone color. name and number printed right there. So it's easy to use that. So one question you might have is, if I'm not working on Pantone paper, how can I be sure I'm getting the right color match? Even if you can't use that particular swatch that you create as the color match, you always have this cap with the number reference on it to communicate to folks who want to know what specific Pantone color you're working with. So that's always there. What is the drying time of the marker? Fast. and Vic will testify to this too. They dry super, super fast. Within seconds, they become smudge resistant. The more you layer and the type of paper surface will affect the dry time too. So the more layers you put on, it's going to stay wet longer. If the surface of your paper is something like a Yupo or something that's not absorbent at all, it's going to take a little longer to dry. But on the Pantone paper, and on most papers like Bristol or other types of marker papers, you're going to get really fast drying results. What's the cap off time? So how long do they stay fresh, or how long do I need to be concerned about the cap being off? We've tested it for 24 hours, which is a long time. But I received some of these in a box, one of the early shipments, and one of the caps was off. So I don't know how long it had been off, and it worked just fine. So these will last with the cap off for a long time. So if you're sitting there working for 3 or 4 hours at your table, and you realize you left the cap off, you're going to be fine, no problem. How do you store the marker? So the best way to store them is horizontally. You've got two nibs, one on each end, right? So you want to have even ink flow for both ends. So you want to store them horizontally. If you just drop them into a little cup, you're going to get the ink gathering in one end, and you're not going to get a good flow of ink out of both nibs. So try to store them horizontally. If you have a set or a box, that's the ideal way. Okay, can you refill the marker? How many times can you refill it? And how do I refill it? So we're going to hit all those things. So first, yes, they are refillable. They can be refilled approximately 7 to 8 times for about the amount of 1 bottle of ink. So 1 bottle of refill ink you can use to refill the marker for a full lifespan, if you will. And I've got a short little video here to show you what it looks like to refill them. So bear with me on this one. We're going to hopefully see it come up, and then I'm going to mute the music because it's kind of annoying here. Annoying in the sense that it doesn't come across my presentation very good. It's actually very fun to watch it on YouTube. Yeah. All right. So you take off both caps, and you see the artist do that here. And then you grab the chisel tip out with a paper towel. You can see it resting there in the paper towel. Unscrew your ink. Have a great little pipette there, which you just insert into the top, and then you can get 3 to 5 full pipettes into it if it's empty. And then you just put the nib back in, remove any spilled ink with a paper towel, shake it a little bit, and you are in business. So it's that simple. All right, so let's see. All right, can I screw open the brush side to refill the marker? So the marker was actually designed so that you just screw off the end instead of pulling the nib out. But what happened, or what we realized, is that coming out of the manufacturing end, it was screwed on there really tight. So some folks just had super hard time unscrewing it. Other folks used a pair of pliers and broke it. So there are all sorts of problems with that strategy. So that's why we go with pulling the chisel nib out to refill it. If you can manage to unscrew it without damaging the marker, more power to you. It certainly can be done that way, but just caution that not only is it difficult, but I don't want you to damage the marker. So your safe bet is to refill through the chisel nib. All right, when do the nibs of the marker need to be replaced? So they're not available yet, but they are getting packaged. There will be replaceable nibs. You need to replace them about as many times as you refill a marker. So if you can refill a marker 7 times, you can use it 7 refills before you actually have to replace a nib. What about the design of the box, which I think is super cool, and it's a really sturdy, durable box too. Here's a picture of one of the larger sets. You can see how nice the colors look there. So they're designed to display the markers and fit perfectly on your desk. So they sit here just like that, so you can see all the colors and you can select what you want. The black box has a white collar. You can see that in there. And that makes it so you can see the colors really clearly. Any other color on that inlay would have made it harder to see the colors. And, all colors affect each other when they're side by side. It also ensures that the chisel cap, the way that they're sitting there, stays upright. So there's a little knobby, if you will, on the cap, and there's a slot in the insert and just fits right in there and holds them in this position. And the boxes all have a similar dimension, so they're actually stackable. So you could get a bunch of the smaller sets and stack them. You could get the two larger sets and get the full 108, and you could stack them or put them side by side too. So really convenient there. How can I see which markers are in the box? So when you go to the store, or if you're looking online, there's a couple different ways to do it. First, every set has a unique sleeve. You can see this is the 54 additional set. So it tells you on the sleeve which set is there. And then on the left side is a sticker with all the different colors. This is very helpful too if they all spill out and you need to get them back there in order if that's important to you. It's important to me because I have OCD. But this helps you with that. Plus, these colors are the Pantone approved color chips too. So a super valuable asset, not just a color chart, but the actual Pantone approved color chips are on the side of the box. So which types of paper can I use the markers and the inks on? You can use any sketch, drawing, illustration, watercolor, mixed media paper. You can get a variety of effects and results by switching from one paper to the next, depending on the absorbency, for example. The Talens Pantone paper gives you the best color match result. What can I do with the marker ink? So many things you can do with this ink. I love the inks. The ink is comparable to other drawing inks. You can paint or write with it. And of course, you can refill your marker. On an absorbent paper, the ink dries more quickly. You can pre-wet it for excellent blends and bleeds and blooms. Super fun to work with that way. Less absorbent paper will provide really strong lines with less bleeding and a longer dry time. I've used quills with these. I've used brushes with these. There are just tons of ways. You can actually draw directly onto the surface with the pipette too. Just lots and lots of options. Anything you can imagine doing with a regular drawing ink, you can do with this ink. Dip pens I mentioned, calligraphy pens work well, brushes. I've even had some artists who have been using these in airbrush, just adding a little bit of water to them, and they flow through the airbrush perfectly. And they have such really saturated, intense colors. All right, so that is my part of it. I'm going to stop sharing the screen here. And then we're going to get over to Vic, and I'm going to take a look at what everybody's talking about.
Yeah, in an interesting turn of events, we've had a lot of people a little bit upset that the markers don't smell like regular markers do. They like the odor, which is a first. That is a first for me to
Oh
hear.
my gosh, you guys,
Well,
I love it. I can relate to it. Oil painters are like
yeah,
this all the time. They're like, I love the smell of the oil paint in the studio. But of course, what's healthy for us isn't always what we enjoy the most, right? But that's so funny. That is cool that folks are saying that. But trust me, you will love these markers even if they don't smell up your studio.
yeah, absolutely. But everybody was pretty excited about them being refillable,
Yeah,
and I think that's a really big plus. And you
great.
can use the ink in so many more ways than that. So I'm excited.
Yes, that really expands it, right? There are a lot of ways that you can incorporate these inks into your own. Even if you're not a marker person, these
Yeah.
inks as a standalone product are super fun and worth trying. I would definitely recommend that. But for folks who are using the markers, now you have a partner to that, and it really expands your vocabulary in terms of the type of images and approaches you can have.
Absolutely. So we do have just a couple questions, if you're ready for them.
Yeah, yeah, shoot, shoot.
Okay, the first one, people are asking if they can use it on different types of paper underneath, like pastels, colored pencils. In particular, they want to know about the Canson Mi Tienes paper.
So that's a pretty absorbent surface. You can use them on it. You're going to see that it's going to suck up the ink.
Mhm.
And you're going to get probably not a super sharp edge with them. But beyond that, uh, they should work just fine. You should be able to put them down. They dry so quickly that you'll be able to work right over the top of them with your other dry media like pastels or charcoal. You certainly can go back over it with other inks. I know that you are probably going to demo it, but and have demoed this before using microns and things like that with them, no problem at all. So it's really infinite. Just know that each paper has its own unique characteristics and qualities that are going to influence the way the inks behave, the markers behave on the surface. But there's nothing to prohibit you from experimenting at all.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. And people are also asking about the availability of the markers. Can they get them anywhere, or where should they look? I
So
gave them a link to Blick, but I know other art stores carry
there,
them.
yeah, there are lots of other art stores out there. So we have kind of a preferred dealer list. So there are a group of independent retailers out there who have these now in the full assortment. It's a great big white spinner when you walk in the store. It's really beautiful, has the inks and the markers and the pads all there, and you can test them out as well. So they're out there in stores now. They're also available online through almost every major art distributor and retailer online, so you can certainly get them now. And they're all at one price point too. So the prices online, the prices in the store are all the same. So no issues there. Of course, going in the store means that you get to talk to somebody and get to play around with them, and that's always a nice thing to be able to do before you buy. So I always encourage that. But wherever you shop, whatever's most convenient for you, they are available now.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. I think that's good for now. I'm sure we'll have more rolling in.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll start looking through them too as you're demoing as well.
Okay, awesome. All right, are you ready for me?
I'm ready.
Okay. How does that look? Good?
And a spotlight. There we go. Looks good.
Perfect. Okay, so before I go ahead and start using the markers on the paper, I do just want to show a couple examples of some art that I've done with these products. The first one is actually done on watercolor paper, and these are using the Pantone liquid inks. And as you can see, it doesn't really look like a marker drawing at all. It's very soft, and it has kind of almost a watercolory look to it. So I just wanted to show that you can really get a lot of different styles out of it. Um, I also have this one, and this one, it was just a marker sketch, just done with the markers, using lots of layering, kind of a more traditional graphic illustrative look.
Beautiful.
And then last but not least, I wanted to talk about using this also on Aquaboard. So like Jeff was saying, by using it on different surfaces, you're going to get different effects. And this ink dries almost immediately. So if you're using it on a paper or something absorbent, it's going to soak it in right away. But if you're using it on an Aquaboard, a surface that you can re-wet, you can actually lift the ink out. So lots of different ways to use it. You don't have to just use it kind of like a traditional marker. You can use it a lot of different ways. Okay. All right, but let's go ahead and, oh, let's see here. Does that look okay?
It's a little blurry, but
Oh man, yeah, it sure is. Is that better?
there we go. Yeah,
Okay.
it found what it was looking for.
Okay, sounds good. Awesome. And I also have, some sets of the markers and stuff. If you guys want to see me unbox it, I'm happy to do that too. So just let me know if they'd like to see that, Jeff.
Yeah.
All right, so here's the marker. As Jeff was saying, it's double-ended. We're going to start off with the chisel tip, and you'll also see this little kind of nib here on the bottom of the cap. This is really handy so it doesn't roll off the table. It'll stop itself, but also it keeps it upright in the display tray, and that's how they kind of stay in order. And this is kind of the faux little Pantone swatch. So it's just a representation of the color inside. All right, so for the chisel tip, it's pretty firm, and you're going to be able to get really straight lines out of this. It has a very consistent ink flow, and it's going to be rigid, perfect for filling in areas, perfect for areas where you have straight lines. Just a nice clean distribution of ink. The brush tip, on the other hand, is a little bit more expressive. If you're familiar with our Ecoline products, our watercolor markers that we have, they have a very similar felt nib to them. It's very flexible and it comes to a really nice point. So you're going to be able to get lots of line sensitivity out of this marker. And also, depending on the pressure that you apply, you're also going to get a little bit of a difference in value as well. You can kind of see where I lifted up and pushed down with my marker there.
I love the brush nib. It's my favorite.
Me too. I don't want to, I don't kind of don't want us both to be on the brush tip team here because it, but the brush tip is amazing. I also have to agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, folks, if you've done the Ecoline or the Ecoline markers, it's the same brush nib. It's got that wonderful touch and feel.
All right, so now I'm going to show you how to do the perfect color. So this is how you're going to get your Pantone swatch. And if you don't have a Pantone swatch book, you can actually make your own Pantone swatches using the Pantone paper and the Pantone markers. So the white paper, again, was formulated to make the perfect swatch. You're supposed to use the chisel end because, again, that's going to be your most smooth distribution of ink. And you're just going to very carefully fill in that area. Now, if you overlap a little bit, you're gonna get your second layer of color, and then it won't be the perfect color match. That's just because this ink is so transparent that if you layer it up, you're gonna get a little bit of a darker color. So you can fill in an area using an intermittent fill or a continuous fill. And the main difference is just if you're gonna be picking up your marker or not. So there you have it. Pretty easy to get the perfect color match, but a lot of us are artists and we're probably not going to just be doing one layer of color. So I wanted to show you guys some more advanced techniques and different ways that you can use the markers too, because you can do a lot of different techniques and mix a lot of different colors using just a few. So let's go ahead and move on here. And stop me, Jeff, if we have any questions at all, okay?
Well, I just wrote this in there too. There was a question whether they were alcohol based or not, and they are not alcohol based. They're a water based vehicle. It's non-toxic, no odor, and permanent.
All right, awesome. So I'm going to show you how to do a gradation with the markers. So basically, we're just going to want to fill in an area. I'm just going to sloppily fill this in here. And like Jeff said, these markers dry immediately, so you're not going to get any smearing. So the way to build up a really nice gradation is to just put another layer right on top as soon as that one has dried, which is almost immediate. And you can already see how we're starting to get some darker values out of there. And this paper can take a lot of different layers. So the more layers you add and the more time you spend making that color darker, the more of a dramatic effect you're going to get. Is that okay? So pretty simple stuff, just kind of layering up those colors. Very buildable. So you don't have to necessarily buy like a light purple marker and a dark purple. You can kind of have it all. This next one, I think is very helpful if you don't want your marker illustrations to look particularly marker-like. And this is just to get a diffused look. So I'm going to use the brush tip for this, and I'll just put down a line so you can see what it looks like without any water. But then I'm just going to use a watercolor brush and put a little bit of water down. And then I will put my brush pen right into it. So you can already see the difference of that very soft edge versus the hard line. But you can even take it a step further, where you put down a line with your watercolor brush and then dip your marker into water, and then you'll have an even more wet look. So just with a little bit of water, you can get a lot of different strokes out of it. And not only do you have to use that for lines, but you can actually use that for filling in an area as well. So if you want a really soft larger area to be filled in. That's a pretty simple technique to do. All right, so now let's do a little bit of layering. Layering with these markers are their strong suit. You can get so many optical color blends using them. And typically with markers, you start off with your darker color, and then you would go over top with your lighter color to blend the two together. These markers aren't necessarily made for blending because you're supposed to be using them for their, well, you're not supposed to, but you could use them for their Pantone color ability. Or if you want to blend your own colors and you're not so concerned about the color matching system, you can just use them to create your own colors.
Look at that deep green. That's pretty.
Isn't that really pretty?
Yeah, the transparency of these inks and the marker and just out of the bottle is really fantastic. Loves lots of great optical mixtures.
You can blend them very, very simply, especially if you just wanted to pick up like the primary colors. You can mix so many different values and colors just based off of that. So layering is very simple with them.
Yeah, I have a request, Vic.
Yeah.
So there were some comments about do these lift like watercolor markers like Ecolina or Ecoline markers, and they do not once they're dry. But in a wet into wet technique like your diffuse section there
Mhm.
is an opportunity before it dries to kind of go and pull some color around. Maybe you could show folks how you can pull that color around in that little area while it's still wet.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're going to be doing a wet on wet later too, and I'll
Oh,
show you how
cool.
you can definitely move it when it's really wet. This is dried just a little bit, and this paper, if you are using the Pantone paper, you do have to be a little bit careful once you get it super saturated because it can
Yeah, it's not a watercolor paper, you're right.
exactly. It's a little bit lightweight to be a watercolor paper, but sure. Yeah, if it's still wet, you have plenty of opportunities to still move it around.
See that? See, that's what I love. So these markers, they dry very quickly, so they're not blendable in the traditional sense, but when you're working into a wet surface, and like Vic said, preferably on some watercolor paper, while it's still wet, you can pull that color around. And this is from the marker here. So, you know, it is very flexible in terms of the kind of pulls and lifts that you can get while it's still wet on the surface.
And yeah, I just saw a question about the yellow marker being contaminated. I'm going to show you guys some marker and ink techniques where we're going to be mixing and matching them a little bit. And I'll show you how simple it is to get your nib back to normal. They're very durable and the ink kind of leaves the nib. It doesn't stick in there like you think it would.
Perfect.
So speaking of which, let's go ahead and do a color transfer.
Oh man, now don't get crazy.
I know, Jeff. I hope that you are wearing two pairs of socks because your first pair is about to get blown off. So this technique works better when you are holding them together for a longer time. The more you hold them together, the more ink will kind of leach out of each marker into each other. And typically it works better with a lighter colored one. I like to draw on the nib a little bit like this. I don't know if that helps or not. I'll show you both of them, but it typically works better with a lighter color. And a lot of calligraphy artists like to do this technique because you can get some really fun techniques or some really fun gradations, almost like an ombre look out of it.
That is so cool. It almost looks three-dimensional.
It definitely does. And then you can just take your marker, and the more you draw with it, the more it's just going to go back to its regular state. And
Nice.
if you do have issues with any stubborn color left on the nib, you can always dip it into a cup of water, whatever water you're using, and then just dry it off on your paper towel, and it will come out of there.
Nice.
As for the darker color, the gradation doesn't always come out as much just with transparency. Using a lighter color
Right.
into the dark is going to be harder, but you can see just a tiny bit of it there on the blue. So if you thought that last technique was wild, yeah, this one's pretty crazy. So I'm gonna use the Pantone ink with the markers. So keep in mind, these are the exact same formula. These inks you can refill the markers with, but you can also use these inks on their own, or you can use the markers on their own. So there's a lot of different ways to use them. If you want to use them together, this is just one crazy way to do it. But the reason I chose the yellow is because I want to show you how we can get this dark purple out of the yellow tip and get it back to normal. So I'm just gonna dip the tip right in there. You can see that purple ink on there. And then we're gonna get a really fun blend between that dark color all the way back down to the light.
It's amazing how quickly it pulls out
It is. And
back to the original color. Yeah.
the longer you hold it in the ink, then the more color you're gonna get leached in there and the deeper your gradation will be. So as you can see, we're already back to normal with our nib. And that's a pretty dark purple.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. That's a great illustration of how they come out. That's nice.
All right, so now I'm going to show off some techniques with the inks. And I'm actually going to be using the same colors for some of the techniques so that we can compare them to the markers. When using these, I always like to have my brush ready to go because these dry so quickly. On this paper in particular, I find it handy to have the wet brush ready. So I'm going to just use the pipette to draw on the paper here, and then I'll follow through my brush to spread it. And I will dip into my water about halfway through a blend just to get some of the ink off the brush because it is so saturated and full of color that I like to empty out my brush just to get a little bit of a cleaner wash. But you can build it up while it's still wet if you want the wet area to be darker, or you can wait for it to fully dry. And it does dry pretty quick, but the more water you use, the longer it's going to take. So I'll let that dry up and then we'll compare the ink gradation to the marker, but you can already see it just a little bit, how this one's going to be a lot softer and this one's going to be a little bit more technical looking.
Yeah.
Isn't that a beautiful purple?
That is intense, even through the camera, even through the camera.
I
Love
know.
it.
It's so bright. Okay, so we'll come back to this one once it's dried up, but let's talk a little bit about the resist technique. For those of you that are watercolor lovers like myself, you are very familiar with this stuff. It's liquid masking film. Talens makes the best one, and I'm not just saying that. I love the Talens brand. So this is Frisket, and for those of you that aren't familiar, it basically is going to give us a resist technique. So we're able to actually just paint right on top. And once it dries, we're going to come back and remove this gray latex stuff, and it's going to leave the white of the paper underneath. So you can do the same thing where you use the ink in its full effect, or you can use a little bit of water it down. But this is really nice for preserving the whites of the paper. For those of you that are familiar with using markers in general, losing the whites of your paper is kind of the main battle that you're fighting the whole time, because once you lose the white of the paper, you can't really go back unless you're working with opaque markers. But because we're doing everything transparently, preserving the white is so important. So resist is a really easy way to do that. So we'll come back and remove these tiger stripes in a little bit once they're dry. But let's go ahead and do some glazing next. And again, I'm going to use that same blue and yellow that we used in the markers, but this time in the ink. And in order for it to be technically a glaze, we just need to paint down a layer and let that layer dry. If it's not dry, it won't be a glaze, it will just be a wet blend. So we're going to let that dry. Should be pretty quick here. I'm gonna rinse out my brush really well. So I'm dipping right into this yellow. And now that this is fully dry, I'm just gonna use my yellow to glaze right over top of that. And you
How quickly it dries is just amazing.
absolutely, yeah, it's it's almost spontaneous. And as you can see here, it's a very soft look. And I can use lots of water to control how subtle of a glaze it's going to be, or if I want it to have its full effect, I can do that instead. But it's very interesting how it's the exact same ink, just in a liquid form with a brush or in a marker. So if you can kind of decide whatever look you want to go for there.
Yeah. I'm just looking at these thinking of the potential too. I mean, you could use them both together, right? You could lay down the ink and put the marker right into it and then go back and forth. It'd be really, really fun.
Absolutely. Like I can take my marker here and glaze over the blue ink.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Absolutely. All right, so this next one is pretty simple. I'm sure you guys have heard of this. It's self-explanatory. All we're going to do is be using a dry brush. We don't want any water really left in the bristles, and we're just going to dip it in the ink. Which, by the way, as far as brushes go for these, I would suggest something synthetic. I really like kind of a snappier brush. I don't think I'd really use a Kolinsky or anything while painting with these inks. But I think these ones are really nice, the Kalia or the Velvet Touch by Princeton. So lots of different options. But I'm gonna dip my dry brush into the ink, and then I'm just gonna do some gestural brush strokes here. And this is going to be really good for things like foliage or animal fur, something where you really need a soft, organic. Oops, let me see if I can get that closer for you. Kind of painterly brush stroke effect almost.
Yeah. I think it'd be fun to get some of those big Japanese brushes.
Oh, yeah. I like that idea. That's what I like about you, Jeff. You always just inspire me to buy new art supplies.
That's why they pay me the big bucks.
All right, so again, this is another watercolor technique, wet onto wet. And I like to have my pipette ready to go because this water dries so quick on this paper. But all we're going to do is just drop our ink right into that wet puddle and let it move around all on its own.
That is super fast
Isn't it crazy how
fusion. Yeah, it just spreads through that water like lightning.
and not only can you just, spread it around with water, but you can pick it up, move your paper around, tilt it left and right. You can have a lot of fun with it. I like to drop different colors into it. You could even drop metallics in here. Like you could drop some fine tech metallics in here. Oh yeah, we could have fun. We could be here all day doing that. Let me hold it up. Yeah, it's still pretty wet, so you can see how I can kind of move it around. But whatever paper or surface you paint on is going to make a big difference in the
Yeah,
dry time of these. So
for
just
sure.
keep in mind. All right, so let's see, it's still a little damp. Okay, so this next one is splattering. And I know all you guys already know how to splatter, but I want to show you a fun technique in particular that works really good with these inks. So let me just cover everything I own really quick. I was just telling Jeff how I bought a new desk, and I know there's going to be paint all over it, but I'm kind of, pretending like there won't be just for, I don't know, just a week, I'm hoping. All right. So
It's good to
splattering,
dream. It's good to dream, Vic. It's good.
it is good to dream. So I'm gonna dip my brush into the water, and then I'm gonna dip it into the ink.
Hmm.
If you want it a little lighter, you can dip it back into the water. And we're just gonna splatter. And I know most people know how to do that. That's pretty simple.
Just on the edge of the camera. Maybe you can push it up a
Oh,
little bit, Vic. Yeah.
thank you. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no worries, no worries. There we go. Perfect. Perfect.
Okay. Um, but if you want your splatters to be lighter, use more water. If you want them to be clustered, you can do it closer to the paper or farther away is going to be a desk activity, painting your desk. But what I like to show is actually using a watercolor spray bottle. So
Mm.
if you have your spray already done, you can spray it again with your water, and you're going to get some really fun different effects of that water just kind of
Yeah.
spraying what's already
Awesome.
been sprayed. So let me hold that up for you.
On.
Oh yeah, it's a mess, but it wouldn't be fun if it wasn't, right?
Exactly.
So pretty cool. When I think markers, I don't think all of this, you know? So it's just fun how you can really mix and match all these different techniques. And let me show you the resist as well. They do make something called a pickup eraser where it's kind of like a block of, I don't know, rubber. I'm not really sure what it is, but you can use it to peel off the frisket, or
Oh
you can
yeah.
just rub it with your finger. But as you can see, we get a pretty simple removal there with a really clean line. And just be gentle. If you're using it on a thicker, heavier paper, you'll have no problems with it tearing. But if you're using it on something thin, just let it dry extra. But here we go. That looks pretty good for resist.
I just love the edges you get with the resist, with the masking techniques like that.
It's so nice and clean. And you can also do it with a marker. You don't have to just do it with the ink. Using the marker with that as well
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
very, very easy. So if you have a hard line, you want to be clean, you can use tape or you can use masking fluid. So lots of different possibilities. And then I want to show off one more thing for you guys. Let me just move this out of the way. Okay. All right, we got a little bit of seepage onto the next page here. That's okay though. I want to show off how these interact with other art supplies because they are water-based. If you are a mixed media artist, like I 100% am, I love using all the art supplies that I can. I just want to show how you can make them opaque because they're transparent. You have to be careful about preserving the whites of the paper, but if you want to build them up a little bit more and have some or opaque areas or perhaps go over an area that you're not happy with, this is a really simple way to do it. All we're going to do is just put a little bit of titanium white. It's very opaque white acrylic ink. These are the Amsterdam acrylics. And then you can just mix in a tiny bit of whatever colors you'd like. And you're going to end up with something that's really opaque. So here's the regular blue. And then here's the blue with the white mixed into it.
Nice.
It's really dreamy to paint with. I highly recommend.
Almost
Uh,
looks like gouache.
it does. It definitely does. It almost has that kind of same satiny finish. And also, if you just want to use that acrylic white ink by itself, or it doesn't have to be white, but you can use it right over top of your marker or ink area to just add a little bit of extra white opaqueness. So I just always like to share that because if people like to layer a lot in their artwork, you can get so much dimension by just adding a opaque element in there as well.
That's so nice. Super nice. Somebody's commenting about maybe using it with gouache, and I think that would be fine. I think you
Oh
told me.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have some. If somebody wants to see it, I can pull it out and make it happen.
Um, well, no, let's stick to our agenda. It
Okay.
was tempting. I was tempted.
Okay. I know there I was waiting for it. There's some
This is
hesitation.
perfect. I think this kind of shows what the result would be, and that's amazing. It's wonderful. I love how quickly it dried again. You were able to put that ink right over the top of it virtually. A little bit of absorbent in the color, but for a great effect. Really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, let me put this back on.
All right, that is fantastic, Vic. I'm going to
Yeah,
remove the, oh yeah, show that again.
let me
Show
show
that
this
full
off. If
shot
anybody
again.
has any questions or wants to see anything, please let me know.
Anybody want to see one of the other techniques again? Get a closer look. Who wants to get a marker kit sent to their home and then experiment with Vic for hours?
That sounds fun. Let's do it. I'll
Well,
bring
I have
some.
one lucky winner who could find out. Are we ready for that? Good
Yeah,
old
let's do
drum
it.
roll here, and
Let's
my
do it.
random selector picked a familiar name here, Susan. Susan, you're today's winner. Susan Hunter Geese.
Oh my
Susan,
gosh, lucky
congratulations, you're
Susan.
the winner. Just shoot me a message on direct message, and we'll get you set up with your new markers, inks, and paper.
Oh my gosh, congrats, Susan. That's amazing.
This is wonderful, Vic. You did an awesome job. I'm going to remove the spotlight now so we can see you again. Uh, awesome.
Thanks
Perfect.
so much. Thanks, Jeff, for having me. I always love sharing different ways about using the markers because you don't have to just use the one layer of ink and have the perfect swatch. You can really do so much with them, being pigment-based, light-fast, water-based. Like, yeah, they're great. So,
Yeah, they really are fun. And it's kind of what I was alluding to when I started out on the FAQs about a unique experience.
mhm.
They certainly have qualities that you'll be familiar with if you use markers, but they really are their own animal, if you will. They've got their own qualities and characteristics that make them unique. And in combination with the inks, it really just opens up a whole new opportunity to explore these wonderful colors. And the colors are just incredibly vibrant and intense. So leave your preconceptions at the door and enjoy these markers for what they are and what they can be for you as an artist. And then, of course, you have this added benefit, this huge added benefit of working with Pantone colors. And for those of you who are designers, illustrators out there, this is just a huge deal, and excited for that. All right. I posted Vic's website on there, you guys, so please check her out, all of her wonderful work, and then also the links on the website to her social media. If you're not following her, you should follow her. She's fantastic. So take a look at her work and her activities. Lots of wonderful videos, including some videos on the Pantone, but lots of other great materials, tips, and techniques as well. So check her out there. The only announcement I have is that in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be back out in person in the world. I'm excited about it. I'm going to be in North Carolina at the PACE convention, the Plein Air Convention, and it's going to be in Cherokee, North Carolina. The Expo Hall, which is where I will be, opens up on Monday, the 20th, and runs through Thursday, which I think is the 23rd, and I will be there every day. So definitely come by and say hi if you're attending that event. And then after that, my next big stop is going to be in New Mexico at the IAPS convention, the Pastel convention. So I will be there for a week mid-June. I believe the dates are like the 13th, 14th, 15th, something like that. But back out in the world, excited to see folks in person again. The next Creator Studio Live has not been scheduled yet, but as soon as I get that set up, I will shoot that out to everybody so you can join us again for the next episode. In the meantime, when I'm on the road, I will be posting some on social media, Facebook and Instagram at Royal Talens NA. So if you don't follow us there, definitely do. And there's some probably live shots from the shows for sure, and some other fun stuff I see on travel. So keep us posted, keep posted where we're at. And we'll see everybody next time on the Creator Studio Live. Thank you so much, everyone. It's so great to see you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
And yeah,
you, Vic, as
yeah, thank
always.
you.
Fantastic. All right, everyone.